We are live. Welcome to my video on the movie released in the year 2000, The Beach. I'm going to start with a spoiler-free review and then later move into a section where I discuss the movie in, a lot of detail, where I spoil it. I will verbally warn before I get into any spoilers. We're doing two of these. Right. Before I get further, so this is a movie rated R. So will this video be? And I love most of this movie. I'm not sure I could say for all of it, but yeah. I know I'm already doing. No, normally I would only do like one series at a time, and I'm already doing Tarantino. But yeah, I don't know. I really wanted to do more, Danny Boyle, especially when he's working in some capacity with Alex Garland. Technically, Alex Garland didn't write the script for this one. This was, an adaptation of a book that he wrote. But after this, he would start writing for Danny Boyle, and they made some really amazing movies together, some of which I've covered. And I'm gonna do any movie that Danny Boyle has directed that I currently have access to in the coming months. Probably a maximum of one per month, and it's possible I'm gonna skip at least 1 month, but we'll see. So let's start with the writing. So basically, the core setup is that DiCaprio's character, Richard, henceforth Dick, for reasons that will become clear, he is kind of bored with his situation and really wants, a new experience. And he finds something that just might provide that, and I think that's all I'm gonna say to not give too much away here. So the psychological accuracy, I would say, is largely very high. I think that's as much as I can say without spoiling. The authenticity is also, as is the, for a number of things, level of detail. There are, it's difficult to talk very much about this movie without spoiling. So we're gonna move on. The tone. There is this, like, at times it's very gritty and harsh, and that's not a spoiler. The first time that it gets that way is just mere minutes into the film. At other times, it is more this, like, playful, fun, like, optimistic kind of, And, so the, right, I should say I have not read the book. But the dialogue is pretty good. They do a good job of giving everyone a distinct voice. And, there are times where characters won't say something, but the fact that they're not saying it and the way that it's not said sometimes communicates more than if they just came out and said it. And, Alex Garland is really, really good at sneaking exposition past the viewer. Sometimes it goes by so fast, other times it's just that we're so emotionally engaged and involved in what we're seeing that we don't notice, Let's see. I guess I should say also that this straight up has, like, voiceover. You can tell there are aspects of it where you can tell it was adapted from a book. They work pretty well. It's not the only time that Danny Boyle has. I don't think it's even the first time Danny Boyle. I believe there was voiceover in Trainspotting, which I don't currently have access to. Um, but that is a really great movie. I don't think I've watched it in like 25 years, but yeah. Right, and I guess I should also say the first time I watched this movie was 20 years ago. And this is only my second viewing, but I remembered liking it. So yeah, the direction, I've seen some say that this is one of Danny Boyle's weaker efforts. I suppose I can somewhat see, like, it is one of those cases where it can be difficult to get a book. Like, if I understand right, like, it was like a novel. It wasn't like a novella, although that also presents problems. But it's difficult because you have to pick stuff to trim out, or at least trim down. I think by and large the movie does well, but it doesn't fare quite as well as the ones that are not adapted from a book. Like, I've said before, I do think that, one of the best that he's made. I just realized I haven't actually opened. There we go. Um, yeah, one of the best he's made remains 28 Days Later, because all right. Okay, gonna do that. So that's dealt with. Okay, that's not what I wanted either. There we go. Yeah. Um, it is. It is one of those cases where the ones that he made that were not adapted from a book, but was an original idea that he and Garland developed together, that tends to come out better. And yeah, I think it is a very strong showing for these issues. And yeah, Danny Boyle, he has a really strong sense of visuals. Um, yeah, there are some visuals here that I did not expect for my first viewing. Some of it I had actually forgotten, 20 years, but I recognized that there wasn't really anything that I was like, that's completely different from what, so it made a decent impression on me. I don't think it was the first one I believe 28 Days Later. The first I watched was either 28 Days Later or Trainspotting, and those make a strong impression. So I had high expectations for everything else I've watched by him. But yeah, he does a good job at, like, there are some scenes that are very short and other scenes that go on for a bit longer, and it's the kind of thing where, some of the short scenes might have been longer in the book, but yeah, by and large, they. Okay, I already made that point, so I'm going to move on to the other point. They have an impact. There's no scene here that, rushes by so fast that it doesn't have an impact, at least on me. I'm not going to speak for every viewer. I know both critics and, audience members did not think as highly of this as other Garland Boyle joints. And yeah, no scene goes on for so long that it gets boring or anything. Yeah, the cinematography is great. There's some really daring, unconventional shots here. And yeah, it captures and creates a strong contrast between, as I mentioned before, the gritty realist stuff and also at times it feels like a vacation, and it's not one of those things. Sometimes in movies, when they show people having fun, we're sitting there thinking, yeah, okay, but when's something going to happen? That's not the case here. They never linger so long on just people having fun that it gets to be tedious, because that's not technically plot. Yeah, they show just enough that we get, okay, people are having fun, and then they move on to something that is happening. The editing is really, really great. Let's see. I think yeah, just each scene has a rhythm, and it just really works. The way that they cut, obviously there's like sometimes very fast cutting for gritty and dark stuff. The way dialogue scenes are cut is also very effective. The production value is great. Um, yeah, it really feels what it sets out to convey. It conveys, and yeah, set design is quite strong. You get a real sense of like ideally you'll want to make, unless you're trying to do something different, you'll want to make something feel lived in, and it should feel like it has a function rather than just being a set, which obviously it's not going to have in real life. It's not going to have all the functions that you want to convey it as having, because that's way too expensive, and a lot of those functions are not going to be displayed in the movie. But yeah, they do a really great job with that. Locations also really great. They found some just incredible nature, and then they did a lot of damage to some of that nature. And I don't want to talk too much about the details. It's been documented, but just yeah, that really sucks. I don't think I really wish they hadn't done that. Let's see. Yeah, costumes and makeup do a really good job making it feel like just yeah, the people feel real, and you get a sense of, like, there are like extras in this movie, and you get a sense of, okay, this is that kind of person, and yeah, the actual characters, the costuming and makeup work back up what we see them do and hear them say and such. This is not the kind of movie where you want that to clash. I suppose this is a decent time to mention. I have seen some reviewers compare this to other movies. If you have not yet read critic reviews, you may want to hold off on it until you've watched it, because I do think a few of the comparisons they make, it's like, yeah, that actually is a little bit of a spoiler. So if you haven't already, if you have, just try not to think about it, I guess. The music is fantastic. They use, some of the time it's score, and that always works. Like every step of the way, the score conveys what it's meant to. Other times they use licensed music to really great effect. Sometimes straightforward, sometimes somewhat ironic, and just, but yeah, it works every step of the way. I do not think there's a single mistake made in the music department. The sound design is great. I can't explain why, but just trust me on that one. So the characters. I If I talk about every single character that I really, really cared about here, we're going to be here forever. So what I'll do is talk about... So I've already mentioned the DiCaprio character. And yeah, it was great to see a reminder. He really was always just such a talented actor. Like, yeah. I mean, to think this movie... he's still turning in great performances, and he was back when this came out. This movie's 25 years old now. If it was a woman, DiCaprio would stop dating her now. And yeah, it's a solid way for him to follow up Titanic, because it is in some ways a very different character. And it's, Titanic is one of those things where you have to afterwards prove. Kate Winslet did the same thing. They had to prove, no, I'm not that character though. Please think of me in other ways as well. They're actors, and yeah, I thought he did a really great job here. And I will definitely, at least briefly, talk about Tilda Swinton, who also just, I don't think I want to give too much away about her character, but just, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's difficult to put into words just how talented someone is, and just, yeah, Tilda Swinton, I've seen her play so many such completely different, varied roles. Like, roles where, like, if I didn't know better, I would think, wow, Tilda Swinton sure has a lot of, let's see, there are only twins if there's two of them. I guess Tilda Swinton was one of the octuplets or something, like, because just completely unrecognizable. There have been times where after watching a movie, I had to double check IMDb. Nope, that was really Tilda Swinton. Holy crap. So completely different from what else I've seen her do. And just, yeah, that is, like, her performance alone, I think, makes this, like, I don't think it's fair to just say this movie doesn't have a lot to offer. Just for, yeah, both of their performances. I would say pretty much everyone does a really solid job. Not everyone is asked equally much. And I can definitely appreciate some viewers will definitely come away wishing that certain actors had been given more to do, certain characters had been given more dimension. I do think that they do a pretty good job. It's one of those cases where you can't give that much development to every single character because there's only so much time, you know. The movie's like 113 minutes, I want to say, without end credits, and yeah, I think they made the right choices about who to develop and when, and I think that does. Yes, I will just briefly say. So, I mentioned that rather than Richard, I'll be calling him Dick. That is because he is one. He is, a lot of the time, a character that you don't necessarily see yourself in so much as, like, is glad you are not. And, like, it maybe makes you want to, like, reevaluate. Wait, I don't actually have any friends that are like Dick, do I? Because, like, maybe it's maybe I should cut them off, because that's yeah. And it's one of those cases where that's something you have to be careful with. But this is one of those cases where personally I think they do a pretty good job, because, like, he is the protagonist, so for sure, some viewers are gonna, you know, watch this and be incredibly frustrated by him. I'm frustrated by him. For some people, it's gonna ruin the movie for them, and that's definitely something you'll want to keep in mind before you start watching this. If you think that it might, there's a pretty decent chance that it will. Yes, there would if you did. It would not be a lot cooler if you did. So the question, of course, becomes, is there a good reason for the closest thing the movie has to a point of view character to be really frustrating? Because the movie itself gets it. This is not one of those cases where they thought they had made a really, you know, likable character. I am a big believer in a character doesn't have to be likable, but if they're not, ideally you'll want them to be an interesting asshole. And I do think he is an asshole, but also interesting. It's sometimes the more flawed a character is, the more you can explore through that. And that, I think, is very much the case here. Yeah. think that's what I'm gonna say about the character. So yeah, the pacing, it's never boring, and they do a good job of keeping things moving. Like there are times where it feels like, oh, are we just gonna stay in this groove for a while because like the people are having fun, but I might get bored just watching people have fun. And they always manage to throw in a curveball. The movie manages to not stand still for so long that that you might get bored, but also not be in such a rush that keep in mind this was a fairly rough time for a number of like movies. Let's see, I want to say the first Paul W. Anderson Resident Evil movie came out like the year after this movie, and that one definitely has pacing issues. And yes, at some point I've done movies 4, 5, and 6. I will do 1, 2, and 3 as well. I have them on DVD and everything. But anyway, they do a really good job on that. The effects are great. I cannot give any more detail than that. And yeah, so this is, yeah, it's listed on IMDb as adventure drama, romance thriller, and it does deliver on each of those. Yeah, like, actually, let's take them in order. Yeah, so adventure for sure. Like it feels like there are times where you almost feel like, oh, I wish I was there. You get like this kind of what's the word? You are vicariously experiencing this adventure. And the romance, genuinely, I cared about if the characters did end up together or not. I'm not going to give away whether it happens. And drama, definitely, I think that might be the one that is most consistently effective at. Because like some of the others, like the dip in and out, but it's as a drama, it works from the very start to the very end. And that's also part of that is that we, again, I can't speak for everyone, but I definitely cared about these characters. It would not work if you watch a chunk of it and you find yourself just not caring about the characters. As I've said it before, about 30 minutes is a good, if you just do not care by 30 minutes, nothing's really going to change. It doesn't, I would argue it's not going to have something after that changes whether or not you care. If you don't care about the characters and the concept that has been set up within the first 30 minutes, the movie's not for you. Thriller, it is also very effective at. Just it builds and maintains tension really, really well when it's going for that. Let's see. I think the various things that are why it gets an R rating, I think they do a good job on, like, I wouldn't really say anything felt gratuitous when it very easily could have. I don't think I want to get into exactly why it's rated R. And that might just about be... I am definitely going to talk about the politics of this movie, but it is not going to be before I get into spoilers, which is shortly. So, my ranking of every single Danny Boyle directed movie, ranked worst to best, and I love all except for Slumdog. Slumdog Millionaire, The Beach, Trainspotting, first one, 28 Days Later, 28 Years Later, and Sunshine. Yeah, this is... I definitely give this a full, strong 7 dicks fucking things up, but at least the movie acknowledges it, out of 10. And that brings us to the thoughts section. So, I think this is going to be... I'm going to try to make this somewhat chronological. So, they do a really good job introducing Dick being a dick. Just immediately, he's like... It becomes clear. He's essentially an adrenaline junkie. Like, he doesn't really want to take any accountability for his own flaws and mistakes. And I will grant some of those mistakes, like the thing with leaving the map, I get why he thought, because it's like, what if they, go all the way there and, let's see, hypothetically, let's say they strand there. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if someone came by, It's the fact that he lies about it, and, yeah. I understand why Sal has him stay on the hill. Yeah, the fact that he doesn't really talk about, what he can contribute so much as what he can gain as benefit. It's very clear that he's one of those people who just kind of liked, yeah, he's this young kid who doesn't have any perspective, any life experience yet, and he just kind of wants the dopamine, and the yeah, I think I'll probably talk more about his character in specifics, but they do a really good job at the start of the movie making Thailand feel like, it is a place that he is getting some enjoyment out of. It just also, like, in some ways puts him off. I am not sure this was the best... I don't know very much about Thailand, but I can imagine this... I mean, it doesn't necessarily make the country look wonderful. Let's see. But yeah, the fact that, there's the thing about, the guy says, you want to drink snake blood? And he's like, no. And the guy basically says, he basically goads him into it, showing that thing of, like, I don't think he uses the word coward, but, no, yeah, let's see. I think he says, oh, you're just like every other tourist, And that's, yeah, he's appealing to, Dick's ego, which is massive and very frail, very, very sensitive. Yeah, so I think, yeah, it's one of those cases. A lot of young guys can be convinced to do things they don't really want to do and know are wrong if I don't know enough about snake blood to say if it's a wrong thing to do, but anyway, yeah, at first he says no, and then he's goaded into it because male fragility, a lot of, yeah. I think I'm okay by now, but it was a struggle. There was a while where I was not the best at this sort of thing. I think an argument could be made that it is contrived, but then on the setup, the reason that he gets the map, but then again, like, Daffy was gonna talk to someone, it just happens to be, like, we're following the guy he did talk to, there's tons of other people that it could have happened to, so that's the basic, I think that works as a justification. sometimes Garland's setups for stories can be contrived. Love his work, but I'm not gonna, you know, I do try to acknowledge he's not perfect. I think that does bring us to the, let's see. Yeah, the fact that he does warn the cleaning lady about the electricity, we do see, like, he's not devoid of empathy. It's just that a lot of the time he chooses to not really act on it, But he does appreciate, yeah. There's people who would have walked right past and not said anything. Protagonist of Videodrome, I'm pretty sure, would have just walked right past. But yeah, at first Daffy is just shouting and it seems like nonsense, and others are saying shut up, and yeah, he goes and talks to Dick. Yeah, he needs something. Maybe he can't quite put his finger on what, but he seems happy with Dick. It seems to be, maybe Dick was exactly what he needed, and he just needed to get to a point where he was comfortable with approaching Dick. And yeah, I think that does pretty well. I guess that does bring up. I wasn't entirely sure. There's these two women who are sometimes seen holding hands in the movie. I wasn't entirely sure. I guess maybe they're implying that those are lesbians, which it's cool that they're accepted by the little community. Yeah, obviously there's nothing wrong with being gay. I just think it's funny to say he needs Dick. Let's see. I think. But yeah, he talks about the beach, and makes him a map and then slits his wrists, which is such a great element in the movie because immediately, like, that is a blood red flag of substantial proportions, Dick. And he just, yeah, he's like, ooh, that sounds like fun. The fun that drove this guy to suicide, that sounds like something you want to approach, So from right away, there's like warning signs that are being ignored. Let's see. So yeah, he talks to, yeah, I guess by this point he had already met Etienne and Francoise, but yeah, they're also a really great, they this thing of like Etienne managing to arrange everything for the trip, and really cheaply and fast and everything. And even there we see, what is Dick doing? He's just letting other people do things he wants accomplished, He never really, yeah, it comes up every so often in the film. He doesn't really contribute necessarily. Like, I'm sure he does some stuff for the community for a while until he's made to stay on the hill, at least. But I think that's just because he realizes there's something here that he wants that he can get in return. More so than, yeah. We never actually hear, like, there's definitely, at the end he says, we all went back to our old lives. I think he maybe even says old jobs. We have no idea what he did before this, what he returns to, because he doesn't really care that much about it. It was a means to an end, which, don't get me wrong, I am not, I do believe even if you don't work, you should still get to, you know, have like a life. Like ideally efforts are made to try to find some work that you can and want to do, but if there simply isn't you know there are some people out there who just for a variety of reasons they cannot have an actual job. I don't think those people should struggle to make rent and afford groceries and such. You know. Um, let's see. I think that does. Yeah, I think I've made my point about that. So the let's see. Yeah, he meets the two guys whose names elude me right now, but the ones that he talks about them, and they point out it's an urban legend. The beach doesn't really exist, and I think it is noteworthy that there is an urban legend. So some people have like, yeah. I mean, let's see. There's yeah. At some point, someone realized from one of the visits, from one of the rice runs, someone realized, and they didn't have a map, but a word got around, and it was decided to just be an urban legend because no, it seems like there's nothing there. Nobody really checked, which makes sense because they didn't have a fucking map. How are you gonna find that thing without a map? Um, Even though this is not the Lost Island, it does not move. I think but yeah. So he is told the urban legend. So word has technically gotten out, but no map. He hears all this, and they make a persuasive case, and he seems to genuinely be considering. He doesn't like it's not water off a duck's back. He does, but he still goes, because he just so badly wants to get away from humdrum existence. He wants this adventure, and he can't help but invite these two guys along with the map. And by the end of the movie, like that decision and that seemingly minimal action ends up ruining the island paradise 100%. Like they could have, like I believe something would have eventually done it, but they could have kept it going for longer if not for these four coming in. And he's fantasizing about shooting them, and they end up shot right in front of him, and yeah, he's upset by it, but it's not what's the word? Part of the reason he was even there was to get the map back. They're near the end. I mean, when he witnesses them shot, and part of the emotion he feels is just frustration at not getting the map back, because that's he hoped that would get him back out of the doghouse with Sal. And I think, yeah, I understand if some are frustrated by the fact that he just leaves this map, and I appreciate that it definitely turns out to have been a mistake. But yeah, I kind of love, like, it is maybe 10 minutes into the movie that he leaves the map, and then I think it's maybe an hour later that they show up, and then the last chunk of the movie, we're just seeing the consequences of him leaving that fucking map. It's such a perfect, because and for a while he's like You want me to stay on this hill? Yes, Dick. She wants you to stay on that hill. This might be the hill you die on because you fucked up. Like, this was a really... Again, I understand why he left the map. But the fact that he lies to Sal and, you know, yeah, like, I don't know. I appreciate that it's difficult to do much once the... I don't know. I mean, hypothetically, let's say he and Sal, like, mug the two guys and get the map from them, burn it, and, you know, like, threaten them that something horrible is going to happen if they come, you know, yeah. If they actually pursue the island. Which technically isn't necessarily that far from the truth, because, like, listen, it was an amazing concept, but Michael Bay just is not the right director for a concept like that. I haven't really liked any Michael Bay movie I've watched. I think the Island was the last one I watched, actually. Other than, you know, watched every movie he made up to and including that one, and I don't think there's a single one that's genuinely a good movie, you know? I do appreciate wholesale fucking ripping off, you know, one of the worst titled movies. What the fuck was it called again? Not Riff Tracks. Their predecessor, MST3K, actually did the original movie. Parts the Clonus Horror. Fuck kind of title is that? Yeah, The Island's a better title, but yeah, it's wild how much, like, if you watch, you know, don't watch the, well, okay, you can watch the original, but just be prepared to laugh a lot. But, you know, if you watch it, I recommend watching it with MST3K. In general, you know, MST3K, very few misses. Yeah, you know, if you watch both of them, it's genuinely unreal how much they fucking ripped off that movie. And there was a lawsuit, if I recall, which, yeah, understandable. Let's see. I wonder if the defense was just, but you named your movie Parts the Clonus Horror. I think the, yeah, right, one thing, I don't know why, it doesn't even matter how hard I try, because in the end, Dick could have just, if he had told Sal, because let's see, I think yeah, they're asked about, did you leave a map behind as soon as they arrive? If Dick has said, oh shit, I actually did leave a map with some people I barely know, maybe they immediately travel back there, try to find them, get the map from them. Like, hypothetically, if Dick just said, dude, you don't want to go, trust me, it was horrible, you know, and get the map from them and get them to promise that they don't remember the map, you know, that might be, you know, but they wait, and eventually the guys do show up. Yeah, I think that does get us to the, yeah, so, you know, they get to the island, they have to swim the last bit of the way. I did find it funny, the idea of, you know, the shark biting Dick. Yeah, that was genuinely fun. You know, oh shit, I saw a fin. Was it a shark? Do I look like, you know, what was under the fin? A shark or something? And, you know, then Francoise disappears. Oh, she was dragged under by the shark. And then something grabs Dick from under the water. And, you know, yeah, that... I agree with the two French people. That was pretty fucking funny. I understand why Dick disagrees. I think that does get us there. So yeah, great bit as you know, they get to the island, and you know, yeah, what was it, like, you know, pot heaven, and you know, Dick, starts wandering a little bit, and he sees this little adorable creature, which, as someone who occasionally goes to Reddit to cheer myself up with cute animal stuff, I appreciate. But as a wise man once said, don't touch the monkey. And he does just barely realize, oh, that's actually like a security system, and then he's like, oh, be quiet, monkey. And let's see, yeah, um, ultimately the guards do become, suspicious that there's something nearby, and we don't see it. We just see, like, he starts rushing away from there, as quietly as he can, and then we see, he managed to get to them, and, like, that does, I feel like he's covering the mouth of one of them, and like all of them are ducking in all this, all these marijuana, which, yeah, if you can't see them, I mean, I don't know, maybe if you heard rustling, maybe it was some small animal running through, that doesn't have to mean that there's someone there, and yeah, they get the place to jump off into the water, and we meet Keats, who, yeah, really, I really, really like Keats. And yeah, they are introduced to the community, and this is where we get political. So, in a lot of ways, the beach community fits the description of a cult. And in some ways, it is like a communist dictatorship. So I'm going to try to explore both. So let's start with the areas where it fits for both. So we have a leader who isn't really questioned, but will pretend, like, because, like, Dick even says in I mean, we didn't really have an ideology. I mean, okay, Sal was the leader, but that was fine. Like, did anybody vote for Sal, or did she just declare herself the leader? And like later we see, there's the thing about, okay, don't all volunteer at once. Dick. I want Dick with me. And later, in me. Not shaming her. But he's like, can't you take someone else? And then she says, does anybody, who agrees that Dick should come with me? And everyone but Dick raises their hand. Who knows what would happen if even one of them, like, maybe one of them is punished if they don't raise their hand. Maybe she starts lecturing them if not enough for her, in her opinion, raise their hand. Yeah. It's a documented fact that Stalin required, yeah, people to applaud for a very long time, to the point where people will, let's see, is it called calluses when it's on your hands, or is that only your feet? But you know what I mean, that sort of thing. And at this point, I do feel obliged to point out the problem with a communist dictatorship is the dictatorship part, not the communist part. A capitalist dictatorship is not better than a communist one. And yeah, I mean, Trump is trying to turn America into a capitalist dictatorship. And yeah, people are losing civil rights, and yeah, things that they need are being taken away from them by the government for, Trump to build luxury stuff for himself and other rich people. Anyway, let's see. other than that, we have the fact that they don't really, you know, both of the aforementioned, both cults and communist dictatorships, they don't really like outsiders. They try to keep them outside, and I think that might be about right. And both of them do have the leader sometimes make decisions that are clearly not beneficial, and no one really, it takes a lot for the members, the people living under a dictatorship and the members of a cult to really challenge the leader if the leader makes a mistake. Because when they told, at one point, that's why they have to do the rice run for Rice-A-Roni. They, I think it's Sal who says several of the bags of rice, was it mildew? I think it was something like that. And we hear multiple voices pointing out, again? How long are we going to keep making this mistake? And Sal doesn't answer that, She doesn't say, listen, I get it. Mea culpa, from now on we're going to keep them in a place where mildew will not develop, because that is doable. I don't know if you know that, but you don't have to accept mildew. If someone says accept mildew, don't say will do. And there are a number of well-documented cases of communist dictatorships and other dictatorships making big mistakes that led to a bunch of people starving. That doesn't end up happening here, but I can't help but notice that that's something that, because it was specifically food. Like that's a big I'm not going to go over it. It's pretty depressing. If you want to ruin your day, go ahead and read about the various I think, I'll throw out a couple of names. Stalin and Mao were both made horrible decisions when it came to that, because they refused to listen to experts. And that, again, we see Sal not listening to the people who are pointing out this is, this keeps happening. We can do better than this. Actually, is that everything? Right. Then we have the fact that there does not really appear to be any trade-based economy. Basically, if you are part of this community, you are given food. If the medical attention is something they can accomplish, they will do that. And you're guaranteed a place to sleep. And basically, like, it seems like, they don't get into that much, but I get the sense that the different people have, like, responsibility. Like, there's something they have to accomplish. Because we do see, some of them fishing, for example. It doesn't seem like anyone has to, like that you have to accomplish more if you need medical attention, the way that, under capitalism in places like America, if you want to be able to afford medical, you need to have an obscene amount of money, which you're only going to be able to get by exploiting people. So, one of the ways that communism is significantly better. Exploitation is antisocial, and under communism, the people form a community, funnily enough, and it is detrimental to the community and as such frowned upon. I'm not saying that no one ever tries under communism, but it isn't rewarded. You're always going to have someone doing something that they shouldn't. The question is it, encouraged or discouraged. And capitalism encourages a lot of bad things and discourages a lot of good things. And communism reverses a lot of those. So, I think... Fuck, do I need to say it? I guess I'll say it. I do not support a violent revolution. Yeah, we should try to reform until we get to a place. You know, I'm not saying that everything, you know, sometimes people don't get their civil rights without some violence, you know. Stonewall is part of how the LGBTQ plus community started to get more rights. But yeah, there's a bunch of people out there who, when they hear communism, they immediately think of like violent revolution, which like I'm not the best person to explain it, but if you read about it, you'll see yeah, sometimes there was a violent revolution and it led to a communist dictatorship, but again, the dictatorship is the problem, and yeah, I'm gonna move on. Yeah, I was against that violence. Any violence that leads to a dictatorship is definitely bad. Any violence that happens as anything other than an absolute last resort, when everything else, every other opportunity has been exhausted, I'm against it. I ain't for it. And I think that does pretty well. So yeah, I am slightly unsure if this is like, because, you know, again, the movie and certainly also the book, you know, yeah. I forget, I read once when the book came out, but obviously it must have come out before the movie. Very rarely does it go the other way. So, yeah, movie, 25 years old, book, at least that. Boyle and Garland were young men at the time, and that is a thing here in the West. There are a number of, I don't know if it's especially white dudes, but yeah, you know, we go through a period where, like, we examine communism because, like, frustration with capitalism, it's kind of like breathing oxygen is just, yeah, it's gonna happen, you know. I'm not saying everybody's gonna eventually be in favor of communism, though that would be very nice. But, you know, especially once they see all the good that can come from it. But again, as long as it's not a dictatorship and it's not being like actively suppressed and prevented by capitalists. Anyway, but yeah, everybody has some issue with capitalism, and as such, yeah, it's especially when you're young, you know, you're gonna be more open to alternatives to the various things that you're seeing in the world compared to once you get a little older. And, you know, it's not a universal thing. I only became a communist, I can never remember exactly when it was, but it wasn't that many years ago. For most of my life I was stock dem. But yeah, Cavernacle convinced me through his videos that that's just not enough. It was maybe 5 years ago or something like that. So, you know, mid-30s for me. But yeah, I can't help but wonder if this was them trying to, like, examine, because, like, we're told that communism just doesn't work. So I don't know if that is what is, you know, if this is them, like, trying to say, I mean, yeah, it would work for a while, but then it would stop working, you know, when, like, really, like, the problems are the fact that they hate the rest of the world, are isolated from the rest of the world, and, you know, eventually, yeah, you know, someone needs medical attention, and it's that, you know, he won't go on the water, understandably, sharks, but they can't bring a doctor there, says Sal, because it would ruin the paradise. So, sorry, like, I mean, they know it's not a like when Etienne points out it's gangrene, like, I mean, certainly I wasn't. I imagine a lot of other people were not really shocked. It's more like, fuck, it had to happen. I don't want this guy, I don't want Christo to die, but yeah, that kind of bite without medical attention, it's gonna get gangrenous. Just, it gets gangrenous. You should have a healthy fear of that. But I think, does that more or less cover, I feel like it's more the isolationism that ultimately destroys it. And maybe also just the fact that, yeah, like, they don't really, like, what's the future there? They're kind of just, like, escaping from modern society for a while, and yeah, like, that's, again, like, the way to handle this, like, I'm frustrated by a lot of aspects of modern society as well. We have to reform it. We can't just go somewhere and live with like a dozen other people and just pretend like the rest of the world doesn't exist, just, and yeah, when like at the start, um Dick was essentially like, it's okay, I want a little more adventure. It's, every place he goes to has a lot of tourists, is basically what he's saying, but later, after he's been on the beach for a while, goes back and it's like, fuck, this is terrible, and yeah, that is like, if you're away from something for a while, you can end up really hating it, not, and yeah, when you see it again, it's terrible to you, That's not sustainable, though. If you make a community far away from modern society, without doctors, without, just, yeah, I feel like there's at least one more thing I really wanted to say about it. Let's see. Maybe it'll come to me later. Because right now I am not really. I'm struggling to recall exactly what it was. Let's see. I think it might be. Right. I did just briefly want to note, I don't think that this is really trying to do a thing on, what's the word? Objectivism, Ayn Rand's philosophy. Because that one was very much about how there are these unique individuals who are just incredible, and the rest of us should worship them. I don't think Sal completely fits that. I feel like she's more of a straightforward dictator or cult leader than an a Randian kind of, because they don't really worship her. They do what she says, but she's not constantly that is one aspect where it is unlike a cult or communist dictatorship. She doesn't seem to really ask for adulation. It seems like she is just like, she wants them to do what she says. She's devastated there at the end when they're all leaving. But, like, yeah, I think that does pretty well cover. Yeah, one major element where this is unlike objectivism is the fact that basically they're all taken care of. Objectivism kind of says, no, fuck regular people. The only people who matter are these unique individualists that, So yeah, yes, I think that does come. In it does seem like they kind of act like they live in this post-scarcity world, which technically the commune is that. They want for nothing, although, I mean, even if they try to keep it going for a long time after, I mean, aren't the sharks gonna keep being there though? As if they can't fish because of all the sharks, can they get enough food? yeah, I oh yeah, I suppose they can buy stuff from the mainland, but you know, sharks is one thing. There could be other, you know, yeah, there are other options for ruining their perfect island paradise. Let's see. I think does that pretty well bring us to so yeah. They haven't been with the commune for all that long when, you know, Francoise, you know, seduces Dick. And considering, like, Etienne is one of the nicest people in the entire movie. Like, he takes care of Christo when everybody else fucking leaves, even Dick being a dick. And, like, Etienne just confronts him, and Dick keeps like, I don't know what you're talking about. And yeah, like, I was practically, I didn't shout at the screen, but it wasn't that far off. Yeah, when Etienne says, "Shut the fuck up, Dick." Yeah, I agree. And I think, and yeah, it is very big of him to say, you know, she's happy with you. I accept that she's going to be with you from now on. Let's see. I think that does pretty well get us to. Yeah. Let's talk. Yeah. Right. I like the references to Looney Tunes. I'm in favor of it. Of them. There's 3 of them. Yeah. Bugs. This is a less appealing Bugs than the one in Matrix 4. And I think there is some chance Dick would have preferred a sentient swarm of bugs to the actual bugs that he meets. And yeah, Bugs, pretty intense. So there's the thing with the, yeah, they're in the water, and, you know, there is a baby shark. Doo-doo, doo-doo. And yeah, it is fun. It's one of those things where, like, it's difficult to, like, Danny Boyle, holy crap, he is a master of tone. Because, like, the movie recovers from, you know, enjoy your dinner, Richard. Like, they didn't have to have the shark mouth that, you know, but somehow it works. Same as the video game sequence later, you know. But yeah, it's all well and good that they get to eat, you know, all this shark. I have no idea how a shark tastes, but later on there are more sharks and they manage to attack. And I feel like I've heard once, sharks to attack humans, you know, it's not something that they, like, we are not super appealing to them as, like, you know, prey animal. A lot of the time when a shark is found to bite a human being, it's because that human being did something really reckless near the shark, and the shark is, like, you know, responding, you know, maybe, like, it got scared, so it bit to, like, because, you know, if you get bit by an animal, you're probably going to try to get away from that animal, and that's what the shark wanted. Other times it's because it is mistaking someone lounging on their surfboard out on the water for a, shit, what are those called? Fuck. Dolphin? The subject matter was not apples. I feel like dolphin is the right word, but I do not remember. But yeah, they see the outline and they mistake. You know, they take one. They you know, they try to bite, realize their mistake, and unable to communicate clearly to the human, I do apologize, dear sir or madam. There has been a misunderstanding. I shall leave post-haste. It just tends to fuck off. But there are various aspects of sharks that make us uncomfortable with it. You know, the fact that they're hidden so much. But there's just this one fin sticking up, you know. Yeah. Um, I think there's a couple of other things, but I don't remember them right now. But yeah, it is silly. Like, we're so scared of sharks, but like we see a hippopotamus and, you know, we're like, well, it took an oath to do no harm, so I don't see a problem. But they've killed a lot of human beings, you know. So, you know, that's another animal we're afraid of for no good reason. Are wolves. Even though, like, I'm sorry, if you get bitten by a wolf, I'm not saying it was your fault, I'm not victim blaming, but like, that wolf must have been cornered, wounded, terrified, something, because they don't see us as prey. They just don't, you know. But some fucker got it in his head, and then it spread. I guess multiple fuckers. There were probably multiple fuckers across multiple countries and such. But yeah, it traveled, and now people are terrified of them, even though there isn't really that good of a reason to. But we humans are really good at being scared of stuff that's different, instead of looking at stuff that, you know, like, if there's that stat about you're more likely to be assaulted by someone in your social circle, someone close to you, maybe even a partner or someone else that you live with, you know, that sort of thing, compared to a stranger. Let's see. I think that was, and yet we're more scared of strangers. Anyway, yes. I feel like I've heard that sharks, like, cause, you know, the other sharks realized there's one missing here. What happened to Bob? And yeah, um, maybe they become somewhat territorial. Maybe they are, you know, maybe there's some instinct that kicks in where they're thinking, like, we're gonna go extinct if we let them keep killing us, so we better attack, you know, next time. And also, I mean, it's not entirely clear if at least one of the people who were like, let's see, there were 3 that were bitten, or was it 2? 2 or 3 that were bitten. Was at least one of them trying to kill the shark, maybe? Because at that point, the shark is just engaging in self-defense. It's castle doctrine. What do you want? Let's see. I think that does bring us to... But yeah, I did like, you know, Bugs was the only person who didn't, you know, praise Dick for it. You know, he was like, no, Dick. And, you know, Dick, like, demonstratively yawns, and then everybody else yawns, and Bugs is like, fucking Dick. And yeah, you know, and that is also the thing. Yeah, like, you probably killed a baby shark. You know, that's substantially less impressive than killing an adult shark. Yeah, I think that does bring us to the point where they're going back to the Thailand that the Thais built. Anyway, yeah, so, you know, they're gonna go back there. I think I already said everything I had about the yeah. I can't help but wonder if she decided it would be Dick because she wanted Dick's dick. Which, again, like, listen, I'm not gay. I'm not into dudes in any way, but I don't blame women for finding DiCaprio attractive, you know. But yeah, you know, they go back and they talk about how horrible it is, and it's filmed and edited so well because, like, yeah, it's the same basic place. It's still Thailand. We saw Thailand at the start of the movie, but yeah, it genuinely, the visually, it's conveyed really effectively. It's horrifying to them now, you know. And Sal says it gets worse every time, you know, which I love that line because, like, does it? Or does it to you specific, like to the commune? Because, like, it doesn't seem like it's changed. You know, they could easily have had like, oh no, now they're, you know, they're putting a Starbucks on every corner or something. You know, one of those things that really frustrates us about modern society. But no, it seems like it's the same place. You know, it's you that's changed, and maybe that's not the best thing in the world. You know, the yeah. Right, also the bit with the dentist, you know, like fuck. At first, I was thinking like, are you seriously gonna deny any kind of help with his fucking toothache? What fucking, like, Jesus Christ, like, I don't know how anyone sleeps at night um, after denying dental to someone. But I mean, I guess it is doable because there are a number of people who work in insurance and deny coverage so that people just have to fucking suffer. Like, Jesus Christ. I guess at this point I should underline I am not in favor of what Luigi Mangione did. I do think it is noteworthy that there are a lot of people who came out and said, you know, a number of them from the, you know, comfort of like being anonymous online, but still, we do all want things to change, you know. I don't want violence. I think, yeah, I've already mentioned, violence should always be the last resort. I I wish he hadn't killed the CEO, but I do think the fact that it got so popular should perhaps lead to some reflection on the part of other CEOs and in general people who work in healthcare who purposefully prevent regular people from accessing, you know, healthcare of various sorts. Just fucking stop denying people that, you know, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so they're, you know, they're back and we knew it had to happen, you know, the guys and the girl start, you know, directly engaging with Dick. And Dick is not having it. And I love the little, I know I said it in the review, but fuck, Tilda Swinton is so talented. Just the tiny little thing. The camera isn't even like, it's not even a close-up. We see both her and Dick. But, you know, the moment that the map is mentioned, there's just this tiny little twitch in her. Because she doesn't want them to know. In part because she hates their guts. And, you know, in part because she doesn't want anyone to come to the island. But, yeah, you know, she's like, Dick did what? Dick fucked us. But he does make an attempt to talk them out of it, even getting, like, verbally aggressive. But, of course, that's not going to be... Yeah, you know, they... Because, like, one of them says, so you're holding out on us. You know, that's... I mean, they don't know him well enough to know for sure if that is the case or not. And yeah, he lies right to Sal's face and later has to pay for it when they do show up. You know, at first on the other island, trying to figure out exactly how to get over to the island with the beach. He lies to her face, says, no map, you know, because, well, let's see, fuck, I forget what the... No, wait, right. I think before they maybe... Did they mention a map or did they just say, did you find that island with the beach? And that was what she was reacting to. I forget the... I think that might have been... No, yeah, he says the map was fake. Let's see. Yeah, she asked about a map. He, you know, lies. He lies a lot in this movie. I think actually he might lie more. You know, I'm sorry, but Sir lies a lot. Not my favorite Kermit role. But the, yeah. was Kermit. Anyway, yeah, I think he lies more than he tells the truth. When like there's something to be gained from lying at all. I think pretty much each time he at least attempts a lie, which makes it funnier that he almost always fucking fails. Like he falls flat on his face. Like either the lie is immediately not believed, like when they still show up, or the lie is later revealed to be a lie. You know, when Salmon is that or is that not a map? Did you or did you not make them that map? You know, just yeah. Let's see. But yeah, the bit with, you know, they have the conversation. Once she's satisfied, she wants a different kind of satisfaction. So, you know, she says, I'm going to go play snooker. You go warm the bed. Sal doesn't really fuck around. I mean, she fucks around, and she also finds out, but she doesn't, like, when there's something she wants, she communicates it very directly, you know, like, yeah. Like, that's as close as she doesn't really need to like, outright say, you know, we're going to fuck as soon as I'm done playing snooker, you know, just, yeah. And she doesn't even ask. That's just, and he, you know, notes in the narration, that was the price I paid, you know. And yeah, I thought the sex was very tastefully handled. It's not like it doesn't go on for forever, but it is one of those things where like it is important that we realize yes, they did have sex. We can't just imply it and leave any audience member like unsure, because it is, you know, later when Francoise finds out, you know, it causes the rift between them. I think that does bring us. Yeah, I love seeing women confident about their sexuality and you know, not feeling ashamed of asking what they want. Although in this case, you know, don't love that he doesn't really get to consent or not. But again, that's, you know, cult leader, communist dictatorship kind of thing. You know, if the dear leader wants you sexually, you don't really get a say in the matter. But the fact that she says, get some rest. I may want sex again before breakfast. Yeah. Let's see. I don't really see any problem with them combining it. They could have Sexfest in bed. But yeah, they go back, and you know, for a while, nothing really changes. Let's see. I think, what was the next thing again? I think, right. I believe the very next thing was the shark bites, and I gotta say, I love, even when he's on this island paradise, he still needs something else. So he's sitting there playing a Game Boy. And I'm not saying that I wish I could still play Game Boy. I'm not saying that I miss playing Game Boy, because I do get to emulate a bunch of the games that I loved on Game Boy, you know. Anyway, I really love the intercutting and the contrast. Danny Boyle is so fucking good at contrast, because like we hear the screaming, and is he at first just ignoring it, or is he just, I guess he's so lost in the game, which, like, okay, fair enough. I'd like to think if someone was screaming because of a shark bite near me, I would look up from my typewriter, maybe once, but yeah, I get being really into the game. And he's also like, one of the games he's playing, it looks like he's like playing as like Godzilla or something like that, and like eating human characters or something. So, you know, it is this thing of like, what's the word? Just some, it's an experience he doesn't get in the real world at all, you know. And yeah, for a while he doesn't even, and eventually he's like, oh, someone's screaming, you know. And they deal with the shark bite as best they can. But yeah, like, what the fuck are they gonna do when Sal insists that they can't bring in a doctor, you know, because the doctor might tell people, And, we do see that, both in real life and in fiction, it is common for it to be this thing of like, yeah, they, what's the word again? The, shit. There was some need that they couldn't meet in this small community, and they refused to let in outsiders, so someone suffered because of it. I think that does bring us to... But yeah, they're able... One of them recovers, one of them died, and it's genuinely a moving funeral, and all of them throw in some stuff and say some nice words, and, they throw dirt on. One of them plays a song which, the others are so deep in their grief that they don't immediately smash his guitar. Bluto style. Not really a fan of Animal House, just to be clear, but I don't know, felt like an appropriate reference. Anyway, right, the bit with, yeah, it was great when, when Dick is about to go into, yeah, mainland, I think it's called, away from the island. He gets this shopping list, and again, it doesn't seem like anyone has like a limitation on how much money gets to be spent. Like, it is the commune's money, whoever, whatever you need, I mean, within reason, obviously, but yeah. Some of them ask for a lot of stuff, some of them ask for a little bit, so yeah. And Bugs grabbing Dick by the balls and saying, Dick, keep your dick in your pants. Yeah, intense guy. And, I mean, he wasn't 100% wrong. Dick did end up fucking. But yeah, it's nice when he comes back and he's like, handing out the things to the different people who ask for them, sometimes throwing. So at one point, like, when he gets to the Swedes, apparently the rest of the stuff is for them. So he just, lets gravity do the work and empties the bags in front of them. That was genuinely a nice moment. And poor Unhygienics, he finally gets his gloves so he doesn't smell like fish. Isn't becoming a fish anymore. That's also, don't try to get me with a fucking Asterix reference. Fuck, did I spend a lot of time reading those comics, watching the animated versions. I subjected myself more than once to the first of the live action movies. Yeah, that's how much I fucking loved Asterix, when I was like a kid and a teenager. So, yeah. I doubt I would make it very far into that first movie today. Why would you take, like, I think they take maybe 3 different books and try to adapt all 3 instead of just pick one and then fill in some stuff. Like, I get that if you just take one of the books, it's not going to be quite enough story for, theatrical length, but just flesh it out a bit. Yeah. Moving on. Let's see. I think that does bring us to the shark bite. So, yeah. The thing about, things had changed. We couldn't pretend otherwise. And it became clear the problem was Christo. You either get better or you die. Those are your options. You can't stay in the middle and be loud and obnoxious about it, And that is such... You're right. To be clear, everything I just said there, I was quoting Dick. I was not saying my own opinion. That is a really great distillation of how we treat people who need help. I mean, yeah, people who are in pain and express it in some way. People who need mental health care, dental. Yeah, people who are maybe disabled and maybe need not necessarily even like help, but just a tiny bit of like consideration here and there. Yeah, a lot of society, a lot of people not really doing a good job with that, you know? Like, there's this thing of like, if we can just put them in a building that's like specifically for them getting help, you know, out of sight, out of mind, as you know, to quote the movie again, you know, but a lot of time we don't follow up on that. We don't think about, well, are they getting the help? You know, like some of us do try to visit a lot, try to make it clear, you know, try to keep, you know, there's that thing about, actually, yeah, there's a pretty good time for me to quote. If you are concerned at all that, let's say, I think it was specifically about elder care. If you're at all concerned that the retirement home that one of your relatives is in, if you're worried that they are abusing the elders, try to, you know, show up unannounced at a time that is a different, you know, don't go the same time and day each time you visit. Try to mix it up a little bit so that they can't just make it look good for when you show up, and then, you know, as soon as you're out the door, they know, well, until the next time they show up, we can abuse them some more, you know. But yeah, that is a problem. That is something that we humans sometimes struggle with. You know, I think it's something we have to learn, all individually, and there has to be more. You know, we have to change the culture around it. And look, I'm not saying I'm above it. I hate that it happened, but there have been times where I, you know, could hear or see someone like express pain, and I didn't want to be near them. And you know, of course, like part of it is that we're thinking like, well, I can't do anything though. I can't alleviate that person's pain, and so it just hurts, you know. Yeah, I think, but yeah, that was really really nicely done. Yeah, they carry him away from camp, and Etienne, you know, practically the conscience of the movie, points out he's gonna die out here. You're gonna let him die just so that you don't have to think about the fact that this, you know, yeah. And the fact that Etienne genuinely is the only person, nobody else, everybody else just walks away, you know, and it's one of those things like, the fuck's Etienne gonna do? He can't move him on his own. He would need at least one other person, you know, and Christo can't stand or walk on that leg, and is weakened, you know, because by this point it's been days or weeks or something, you know. He's weakened from the wounds, so he wouldn't be able to, even if Etienne like lifted him up and like was a supporting shoulder, and like tried to carry him as much as he can. It's not gonna work, you know. I think that does bring us to, I will say, like, realistically, I could imagine it would have been a woman rather than a man who would say, we can't do this, but at other times it does, like, let's see, the fact, there are other places where it does. Sal is a powerful woman, so when she sexually desires a man, she tries to arrange that they can have sex. Sadly, powerful people of all genders have done such. I forget if men do, if the rate is different. If you want, you can look up the stats, but yeah, sadly, it has happened for sure. Let's see. I mean, it is definitely one of the biggest problems is powerful men being sexual predators. Let's see, and sometimes getting substantial power and influence, and then being very scared that the truth might come out and try to prevent the truth from coming out in a way that just makes them look even more guilty, even as more and more people realize this person's probably guilty. We'd like to see, you know, yeah, I think you probably know what I'm talking about by this point. Trying not to get sued. What can I say? Let's see. I think. Right. So yeah. Other than that, there's the fact that Francoise, when she realizes that he cheated on her, she breaks up with him. You know, yeah, very, very realistic to, yeah, and also the fact that, you know, when Sal finds out that Dick fucked her, in the other way, I mean, she doesn't engage in violence. Keep in mind, like, if she told Bugs about the map, Bugs would probably beat Dick. Yeah, he would be beating that meat. But instead, she says, you are going to stay out here, and you're going to get that map back. Because this was your fuck up, Dick, and you're going to unfuck this, Dick. And yeah, that feels like something that a woman might come up with, this kind of thing of like, and you know, again, it is like, it's a lot. Like, as punishments go, like, she could go further, sure, but it's not nothing. But again, she is essentially a dictator slash cult leader, and that's the kind of thing that a power, yeah, someone like that would come up with, would be willing to do something this harsh, because it really does a number on his psyche, you know, clearly. And the fact that it is not really a physical thing, it's more this psychological thing, that feels like something that, you know, a lot of the time, you know, women, yeah, it is more like they are socialized. I'm not doing gender essentialism here, but they are socialized to be good communicators, very empathetic, and really, you know, yeah, understand people. And this is a punishment devised by someone who understands people. You know, she understands this is gonna really hurt. You know, she expects that eventually he'll either get the map or get himself killed and the map destroyed or something. And, you know, yeah. Because, like, keep in mind, it's one thing to say, you know, we have to stop them, we have to get the map back. It's another to say that Dick specifically, personally, has to stay there all the time. Like, she could say, we're gonna set up shifts. We're not gonna tell them that Dick fucked up by dicking around and I mean drawing a letter or writing a map. We're just gonna say somehow Palpatine returned and gave them a map, and we're gonna get that map back. You know, she could easily say, you know, I mean, there's so many people in the commune. I don't know, 4-hour shifts maybe. I feel like that would make sense. You know, that's 6 people to 24 hours, and you know, by the end of that 24 hours, that first person has rested enough to do another shift. So it could just be these same 6 people, you know, over and over, you know, because that's not that much time. And then when they get back, they could maybe like get special privileges to you know, recover. But yeah, that's. But instead, she says, no, you're gonna stay here 24 hours. They could be there for weeks. Then so will you be. Let's see. I think that does bring us to the. I feel like there's something else. So there's the shark bite. There's the map. There's them over there with the. Yeah, yeah. So I have seen some compare this to Apocalypse Now. Some even say, you know, Apocalypse Now 2 Beach Vacation, which. That's a zinger. That's a burn. That's a pretty funny. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some Apocalypse. I mean, he does shit. Am I spoiling that movie? I guess I'm not spoiling that movie. I'll just say, you know, here in the last bit of this movie, yeah, there's something, at least one thing from that movie that's very similar. It's also been compared to Lord of the Flies, which is a book about one really big supply that votes contestants off an island, I think. If 2.5 Men taught me anything. But yeah, definitely also some of that there, you know, the way that it affects the psyche to be in this kind of situation. I guess I'll just briefly, so some of the others, I also saw someone compared to Fantasy Island. I don't know enough to make a, you know, to comment on that. Fuck, what was the last one? Fantasy Island. You know what? I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember that it's not something that I felt like I could comment on, so we're just going to move on. Anyway, what was the other thing? The other thing was the, shit. Right, so yeah, we're seeing him, you know, how it does a number on his psyche, and I love the way that at first he tries to rationalize it. You know, he's like, oh, I don't need them. I'm actually much happier out here because no one's telling me what to do. Which, again, yeah, like he doesn't really like responsibilities, you know? And yeah, he starts just playing around, which, you know, and acknowledges that in narration also, which is also, like, to be clear, I didn't always, but this is something that I learned from Savvy Writes books. She from her videos, from watching her videos, I really came around on this. We should not really stop playing. You know, it is healthy for adults to engage in play. It just shouldn't take over. Like, we should also do other things than play. But yeah, it's healthy, and a lot of people are happier if they play. You know, and it doesn't have to be like, you know, she plays with dolls still. She's also said that doesn't have to be. That's not going to be what everyone. You know, I really, really love playing video games. You know, it's been a long time since I played in any other way. But yeah, you know, just something that engages the imagination and takes you away. You know, Coltan, what was that called? Anyway, from regular life, just briefly. You know, it shouldn't take over. It shouldn't become, you know, yeah. But however, him playing there in the jungle by himself, it is clearly not quite healthy. That is him like trying to figure out, you know, yeah. And he also, right, we also have the I guess that is the same time around. Okay, so yeah, let's briefly talk. So PTSD nightmares, you know, he keeps remembering Daffy. You know, this is not the only movie that Danny Boyle has something to do with, where Robert Carlyle, you know, there's a situation where you might think, you know, I guess that's a spoiler. I'll just say he is threatening and scary in other projects that he's done that have something to do with Danny Boyle. But but yeah, the bit where, you know, he's lying there and then he wakes up, just so fucking creepy. And yeah, you know, he's rambling and he's saying these nonsense things. You know, what was it, like year one, and, you know, like stuff about, you know, are you with me or are you against me? You know, he's getting into this kind of way of thinking that is extremely unhealthy. You know, and yeah, you know, he starts fantasizing about like having a machine gun and gunning down the 4 people with the map, you know, because like he's so thoroughly dehumanized them in his mind. They're just the obstacle. They're those people. They're from that place, that nasty place that you don't want any contact with. You only tolerate, you know, and yeah, like, I'm not saying it'll happen to everyone, but if you spend enough time thinking like that, talking like that, yeah, you're eventually going to hate, you know, people to the point where you fantasize about violence. And I really love the fact that because they do, they do squibs in this movie, but when he's fantasizing about it, it looks more like he's knocking over, like the way they kind of fall this, yeah, and there's not any blood spurting out, so it is this, in a way, like, violence isn't quite real to him because he hasn't really witnessed violence against human beings, it seems, other than the shark biting, obviously. But yeah, so yeah, to him it is this other thing, and I guess at this point I should just briefly say, so yes, I say some very harsh things about conservatives. I don't actually hate conservatives. I try not to hate anyone. It is not constructive, and I don't think that there's really any human being. Like, I believe that there are ideologies that deserve to be hated. Some of the most dangerous ones right now are Nazism and fascism in general. But hating human beings, there are some that I find deeply frustrating. I still want their problems solved. I want for all of us to live in as good and healthy a way as at all possible. I do sometimes say harsh things about conservatives because part of why I do it is, if a conservative watches one of my videos and hears me say something like that after agreeing with me on other things, that might be the first time that they encounter someone who strongly disagrees with conservatism, but who they can otherwise recognize the basic humanity and decency of. And that might be what sparks them to reconsider conservatism. That's what it is. And sometimes, honestly, I don't know. Maybe I am going to stop, because I don't explain this each time, and I do sometimes worry that people will watch one or more of my videos and see that and hear that and think that it is like, yeah, I am considering just maybe at least changing how I express it enough to make it clear that I'm talking about the ideology, not the human beings who have been fooled into believing the ideology, or, the ones who peddle it knowing better, who I do find extremely frustrating, but I don't want something bad to happen to them. I just want them to stop harming people. Now, I think that, yeah, so, yeah, the video game bit where, like, they do such a great job. Like, you can tell they played, like, that is, yeah, PlayStation 1 era, the graphics. And I think I read that they actually recreated one, like, part of a PS1 thing. So yeah, was it Crash Bandicoot? I forget. If so, I don't think I recognized it from 2 or 3. So maybe it's from the first one. But anyway, that one I never played. Anyway, but yeah, really great job on it. And the thing about, game over, try again. And it just fades because it is this thing of like, how long are you going to keep doing this? Like, this doesn't seem healthy. It is, yeah, it is negatively affecting his psyche. Let's see. I think that does bring us to the bit where he straight up, yeah. So they get there, right? Oh, holy shit! The bit where he's actually like crawling around, and he takes the AK from one of them, and it looks like he's about to shoot. Jesus fucking Christ, dude! But yeah, that's how, he's really, really struggling to hold on. And as so many other men, here in the West, like, we have this very strict idea of what masculinity is. So he's essentially trying to, like, now that he isn't, like, his identity is in flux right now, because he identified as part of the commune, as being with Françoise, and now he's there alone for weeks. And yeah, he has to redefine himself. And so, well, there's all these people around. First he's like throwing a rock and like looking at, look at them, scatter, and they're looking for, and he's hiding well enough. And he's talking about, in the voiceover, the what was it? They are my defenders or something, some shit like that. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And yeah, thankfully he doesn't end up shooting anyone with the AK. He puts it back, but he does take the headband off one of them, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? And yeah, later on, the leader of the farmers is like, the one who's been sneaking around, because like, of course they're gonna notice, um, yeah, he and there's a great transition where he moves from inside the imaginary hotel room, which is all messed up with like bullet holes in the wall and shit, and Daffy is helping him up, and yeah, then he climbs up, so he's struggling to separate fact from fiction, basically. And yeah, that brings us to them arriving. So yeah, and they start, one of them's like singing about how much weed he's gonna smoke, and Dick tries to get in there, but yeah, the farmers show up pointing guns. And one of them is like, oh, maybe if you give them some money, and he's trying to explain in English, what makes you think they speak English? They're guards. They're not really, yeah, they're not there to fucking negotiate, dude. But yeah, and I get why he's doing it, because what else is he gonna do? And he does not look like one of the people who, like, some people when they travel to another country, they try to learn the language, because like, hypothetically, if he could, because what he's trying to convey is fairly simple, we made a mistake, we'll leave now. I don't know if they would be allowed to leave, but there could at least be a conversation if he could say that in Thai. But he didn't bother to learn. But yeah, one of them is like, give him money. So he takes out some money and tries to go close to, and the guy, of course, shouts, because like he's thinking, if he gets close to me, he's gonna try to take my gun away, And yeah, ultimately, one of them panics, shoots one of them, the others run, they also get shot. And before the girl with the map is shot, she sees Dick, and he hisses at her. Because like he's animalistic at this point. He's completely lost his like sense of, and there at the end he also says, I have to leave this place. I'm not gonna become myself if I stay here, or at least not in a long time. But yeah, he doesn't manage to get the map, and we do see like it gets covered in mud and blood, and we're thinking maybe it's unrecognizable as a map. Maybe it's just gonna look like they brought a piece of paper for no fucking reason at all. But yeah, ultimately it is determined to be a map. Right, I did want to talk about, so yeah, at one point, yeah, if you've ever happened to watch Apocalypse Now, and I do recommend it. It's an excellent film. I don't think I've watched it in 20 years, but I really, yeah. I mean, fucking, I want to say Francis Ford Coppola is his name. Just, I haven't watched everything he's done. Maybe some of them are terrible, but fuck me, that movie and that Godfather duology, like, Jesus. I'm so relieved that he resisted pressure and never made a third Godfather movie, because hypothetically that would really fuck things up. Seriously though, I don't hate Godfather 3. It's just a step down, substantial step down from the first two. It's not like the worst thing ever made or something. Like, I think people who absolutely hate it, it's because they love the first two so much. And those are some of the best movies ever made, so I don't blame them for loving the first two. I might at some point do videos on the trilogy. We'll see. Anyway, yes. If you've watched Apocalypse Now, you might recognize the shot where Dick emerges from the dark. Dick in the Dark. Every night on ABC. Laugh Riot. Anyway, yeah, you know, Keats shows up and says, why do you need to improve your night vision? You know, and yeah, he drags him back to the commune, and, you know, he's able to overhear the others. And I love the fact that we don't actually know, because one of them says, I know he's stealing food. Because it seemed like food was free in the commune, and they seem to think he's still a member. You know, they talk about how he's not pulling his weight in the commune. That means they think he's still a member, and he should be pulling his weight. So is the stealing food, is that because he's not pulling his weight, and that means he doesn't deserve food? Which, I mean, that is, if those are the terms that he agreed to, I can appreciate saying, you know, because once again, like, they don't know that he's been told to stay there. You know, they think he did this on his own, which is also part of the punishment. Because Sal didn't tell anyone. Because she could have said, you know, I gave him a special assignment. He's going to be gone for a while. It's okay, you know, but she didn't. She did make sure to tell people that they fucked, that Dick fucked her. And apparently Francoise was the last to find out, so that's, again, a part of the punishment. Yeah, so that was also, you know, when he says, are you going to tell anyone what I did? And she just walks off. She definitely heard it. She could have said no. Or she could have said yes, but she wants him to not know. And ultimately, she doesn't really. The others only find out when the farmers show up with guns at the commune. Anyway, then we have the... yeah, so, you know, is he stealing food? Or does he just still think that he has food coming to him, even though he's not pulling his weight? Because, like, stealing food also implies that he's, like, doing it secretly. Because she doesn't say, why is he still eating here when he isn't pulling his weight? You know, she specifically says stealing food. And we don't know if that's true or not. Because he is surviving for weeks. Is he that good at, like, killing something to eat in the forest? In the small area of forest that he can successfully navigate without running into the farmers or going back to the commune, which if Sal finds out, she's going to be angry with him over. You know, it's, yeah. I think there's a chance that he is still eating the food that is at the commune. And I guess whether or not that is technically stealing is a matter of opinion. But yeah, you know, when they don't see him for a while, when he isn't pulling his weight, they start shit-talking him like that, you know. Or I guess, you know, one could refer to it as gossip. Or does it automatically become... Because, like, when it's women, it's called gossiping, and it's hated on, frowned upon. But when it's men, it's called networking, and it's seen as a strength. So, I don't know, because some of the people participating in that conversation, I think some of them were men. Were they only women? I forget, but yeah. Yeah, you know, it is one of those things, like, if they really need him to pull his weight, like, because if he is eating the food, which he seems to be, it is fair, again, they don't know about Sal's, you know, it is fair for them to expect him to pull his weight, and yeah, I think I've said everything that I had about that, but yeah, so yeah, yeah, after their shot, you know, he realizes, shit, I didn't think about I might have to watch people die, you know, and some of her blood sprays directly on his face, and fantastic acting by DiCaprio as usual, you know. And yeah, he goes to the tent to talk to Etienne, and he also talks to Francoise and says, you know, please, let's leave by boat, you know, and gets Etienne to leave the tent. And I think his killing of Christo, an argument could be made that it's euthanasia, because Christo is going to die. The leg is gangrenous and the gangrene is spreading. He's going to die, and it's going to be slow and painful. But he also doesn't ask Christo. He just does it, and he made sure Etienne wasn't there, because he knows Etienne would, at the very least, say, we are not doing that without him giving clear permission to. And like, let's see, I think there's a thing about, is he the one who only speaks Swedish? He doesn't really speak English. They had an interpreter. I don't think he died, did he? Wasn't he the... No, yeah. The interpreter didn't... he was still around, so hypothetically they could get him there and, you know, translate so they can find out about if he wants euthanasia or not. Because he might, you know, you don't know. We don't find out. He definitely didn't want... You know, he wasn't ready for it just then, clearly. That's where Dick has gotten to. You know, he's ready to kill someone. Yeah. And you know, it's one of those things, like, is he putting him out of his misery? Or is he getting rid of an inconvenience? Because Etienne said, I'm not leaving this island without, you know, while Christo is still alive, and then Dick sends Etienne away. I think it might be more that it's an inconvenience, and at this point he just doesn't think that highly of human beings in general, you know. Let's see. I think that does pretty well. Yeah, I do appreciate that occasionally he does, you know, admit that it's his own fault. I don't know how much he learns to be a better person necessarily, but yeah. Because that is also, you know, when we talk about, because it is essentially a utopia that they've created in this commune. What if someone selfish, a selfish fuck up, joins that utopia? Can it survive that? That is part of what the movie's about, you know. I don't think it would be as interesting if it was just saying, well, even if everyone was perfect, utopia would still fail, because, like, yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm the right person to really discuss it, but I understand that perspective. Let's just go with that. But whether or not utopia can survive an asshole, an antisocial jerk, that is very much, you know, yeah. And what happens, you know, what does, because, like, I don't know if I think I've said what I had to say about Sal's punishment of Dick, but I feel like that is definitely her trying to resolve the matter, you know. And she definitely makes mistakes over the course of the movie. That's, you know, without a doubt. Let's see. I think that does bring us to... So yeah, you know, he's hiding, and then he's knocked out and dragged into the area of the commune, and they show up with guns. And yeah, you know, they point out there were 4 people there. They had a map. And, you know, this thing of, yeah, Dick once again trying to, you know, that was great when she said, Dick, shut up. And yeah, like, I get what he's trying to do, but I do not think he's doing a very good job of, you know, I don't think he's really thinking through if they would be receptive to him saying, you know, because, like, what's happening is essentially the leader of the farmers is talking to the leader of the commune, and the 2 of them are going to negotiate it. It's sort of like an alpha thing of, like, you know, only them, they are the only ones who are allowed to speak. And yeah, like, as soon as they realize, oh, you're the guy sneaking around, and I think they also realize about the map, and it is also this thing of like, yeah, they don't think that Sal made a map. Like, why the fuck would she do that? It's what did she say? 6 years. It's been working for 6 years. She's not suddenly going to, yeah, draw a map. That makes much less sense than the new guy did it. Then we have the yeah, they say this is the only way you can keep paradise, and taking out 5 of the bullets, seeming to put the last one back in, but I'm a little unclear on if they're at the end, if it was because it wasn't the first bullet, or if, I mean, he didn't put a blank in because then it would have made a bang and just bit. Yeah, I guess maybe he put it in like so that it wouldn't be the first bullet fired, because as soon as she like attempts to execute, yeah, and the head farmer knows that they're not gonna put up with that. Dick is a dick, but they don't want to witness an execution, and he points that out to her. He says, "You really think paradise is gonna last after they witness you shooting?" Go ahead, everybody, watch her shoot me. Watch, the blood and this whole, yeah. And she attempts it and fails, and everyone walks away, and she just stays there. She doesn't go with them, so they leave her there, and yeah, like without anyone else. I mean, for one thing, it's going to do a number on her mental health. For another, I think they took the boat with them, didn't they? I don't know that the head farmer is going to help procure transport, so she's just stuck there. Eventually, the food's going to run out. I don't think any of the farmers are going to sell to her, considering that she risked everything. And I also really appreciated, yeah, the humanizing little thing about he says, "I'm a farmer. I work so that I can send money to my family. If this place gets discovered by a lot of other people, I'm not going to be able to do that. My family will fucking starve." Yeah, we can understand why he's, holding a gun on people over that, because they had an agreement. They said nobody else comes in. I think that does pretty well. Yeah. So they go back, and he narrates about how, well, we went back to our lives, and he checks his email, and for the second time in the movie we see he doesn't really think that much about how his parents feel. He called them, and then he said, "I don't know, a while longer. I like it here. Okay, goodbye." I mean, that's clearly one or more of his parents. It's possible both of them are on the line. Did we have that back then, where you could have multiple people on the line, or only two? I forget. Yeah. In my defense, it was a quarter of a century ago. Most of my life ago. I was a wee lad. But that's not quite accurate. I only got a Wii several years later. I did really love playing the Wii, though. Anyway, yes. So the second time, there's the email from mom and dad that says, "Where are you?" ? And he doesn't even look at it. He notices it, and then keeps looking at other emails. He just doesn't really care about other people, not even his own parents. And we never find out anything about them. Clearly he's American, and he wants adventure, and that's basically it. And yeah, I mean, he is rootless. He is someone who doesn't really. He never fully settles down in a way that, because to settle down, you also have to take responsibility. You once the thing about the map, they should have dealt with that. He should have told Sal the truth. Let's see. So we have the yeah, genuinely just he's just looking for the dopamine rush. And I think that does pretty well bring us to, but yeah, there at the end, he opens the other email, and there's that thing about, in an alternate universe, love Francoise. The she developed the picture and emailed it to him of them happy on the paradise beach. And yeah, like, even after all of that, like, I mean, I wonder, are they just gonna, basically run on fumes, just live off the memories of the beach? Because obviously they're not gonna go back. That's never going to happen. But will he ever be able to mature, to settle down, to actually have, I guess I should say, I mean, I'm not saying that everybody has to settle down, but I think we all at some point in our lives have to become responsible adults, like take care of, like keep in mind how our actions affect others, how the world is affected by us, like, obviously part of it is, getting corporations and governments to not pollute, for example, not, abuse, and such. um, it's more like they do more damage in those areas than we humans and as individuals do. But yeah, try to make the world a better place. And yeah, I don't know if Dick is gonna do that, or if he's just gonna keep at this, because yeah, still, like, after all this time, he's still not communicating with his parents and reassuring them, because, like, parents like to know that you're okay, yeah, I think that covers everything. So yeah, I is there any other, because I think I did get into each and every I thought it was very fitting that genuinely, yeah, Sal did end up ruining it. She ended up going too far, because she'd been a dictator the whole time as far as, yeah, it seems like as long as she's been on the beach, she's been a dictator or a cult leader. And there at the end, she just goes too far. She pushes it too much and ends up, like, yeah, of course they're not going to stay after witnessing that, after seeing that she was willing to kill him, just like that. And Bugs is only too happy to, yeah, he holds Dick, puts his hands on Dick, and makes sure there's no way for him to escape. Because, like, at the end of the day, I mean, they only really have his word. Like, it appears to be true, but they only really have his word that Daffy killed himself rather than was killed by someone else. And I mean, they have their differences, obviously. They've had a number over the years, but at the end of the day, like, yeah, Bugs is going to get revenge on the killer of Daffy.